Hey guys, this is Saikat. Welcome back to my channel Saikat's Tutorial. Today I will talk about change detection strategy of Angular. Before that, we need to know what is mutation. An immutable value is one that once created can never be changed. In other words, keeping the original element unchanged at all times. In JavaScript, primitive values such as number, string, and boolean are always immutable. However, data structures like objects and arrays are mutable. For example, let's take this example where str is equal to example. Now let's slice the string from position 1 to 3 and console log str. Let's check in browser. Okay, it has displayed the whole string because no string methods change the string that they operate on. They all return new strings. The reason is that strings are immutable. They cannot change. We can only make new strings from it. That means it has returned something new, and then if I print str2, you will see two different strings here, example and exe. Exe is the cut from position 1 to 3. Now if I take an array, for example, where ARR is equal to 1, 2, etc., and then I do array push 3, and then if I console log error, you will see 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Array prototype.push allows us to push elements to the end of an array. This method does not return a new copy, rather mutates the original array by adding a new element, where array.prototype.concat does return a new array. Since you know mutability and immutability, now we can discuss about Angular's change detection strategy. Angular has two different change detection strategies: OnPush and default. OnPush means that the change detector's mode will be set to check once, and default means that the change detector's mode will be set to check always. If we don't mention any change detection strategy, then default will be the change detection strategy for us. In our example, we have a test component and a child component. The child component is used within our test component.html, and we want to pass some value over there. If you look in child component very closely, you will see we have not used any change detection strategy for it. That means it has the default change detection strategy. So what happens when we use default strategy? Changes are triggered by events, and the propagation of changes is done in two phases: the application phase and the change detection phase. In the first phase, the application is responsible for updating the model. In the second phase, change detection starts at the root component to traverse all the components of the tree, even if they do not seem to have been modified. After detecting that some change of the properties bound to the template have changed, so it will update the DOM to get the view in sync with the model. To define change detection strategy, you need to import change detection strategy enum, and in your metadata you need to add this change detection property and change detection strategy dot default. I am going to use default strategy for now. However, it is not required to mention the default change detection strategy, because by default it will take the default option. In our test component, we have a dates variable, which is actually an array of timestamps, and that array is passed to app child component using dates attribute, and that dates attribute is received through input decorator within dates field. In the view of child component, we are displaying all timestamp by looping through the dates array and displaying the timestamp. In the browser, as you can see, the timestamp is displayed. Now what we want to do, from the test component we want to push some dates in the dates array. Dates dot this dot dates dot push. Now let's push a new date into it. When we click on this click to animate button, that time this animate me function will be triggered and a new date will be pushed into dates array. Now let's see, I am clicking on this button. Yeah, so dates are pushed into the array, and from our child component we can display all timestamps. Now if we change the change detection strategy in our child component to OnPush, see what happens. Now clicking on this button, nothing is happening. So what happens when we use OnPush strategy? This means now we muted the object directly. OnPush works by comparing references of inputs of the component. Until we provide a reference to a new object instead of a muted existing one, the OnPush change detector will not get triggered. In our test component, we are mutating our dates field. So instead of this code section, if I write this dot dates is equal to this dot dates dot concat with a new date, then it means I have some existing dates and concatenating with a new date and creating a new property. So now this dates has a new reference. That means now child component should detect the change. Now let's see it in the browser. Clicking on this button, see, changes are detected. So every time when I click on the animate button, a new reference is created in the dates array. Here Angular has provided a very handy tool, Change Detector Ref. It has several functions. By using those, we can manually check for any change, or we can detach any change detector from the component. To use Change Detector Ref, you need to import it from Angular core, Change Detector Ref, and now let's create an instance of it, cd Change Detector Ref. Along with OnPush, if we mutate an object, then we need to trigger mark for check with ng do check or ng on change, which checks if the reference of the input property has changed or not. Here let's mutate this dates property, and now see what happens if I click on this animate button. It is not taking the change. Now let's manually check for any change. So in our ng do check, this dot cd dot, let's write mark for check. Now clicking on this button, see, changes are now detected. However, we are mutating the property. It still can check for any change. If you want to know more about these lifecycle hooks, you can click on the above link. While using the default change detection strategy, if you want to detach the change detector, that you still can do using detach function. So here the changes are detected since we are using change detection strategy dot default. Now, okay, let me comment this out. It still can detect changes. Now let me detach the detector. So here if we write this dot cd dot detach, then it will not watch for any change. See, so the value is not there since we have already detached, and on click it is also not listening for any change. There is another way to run change detection once for the current component and all its children. This is done using detect changes method. This method runs change detection for the current component view regardless of its state, which means that checks may remain disabled for the current view and component will not be checked during following regular change detection runs. So now let me show you that I already have detached the event. Now let me implement detect changes. So if I write this dot cd dot detect changes and see in browser, you will see the value is here. Now if I click on this animate button, the value is not updating, since ng on changes ensures the change only for once. And if I use this function in do check always checks for a change in the component and in its children. Now click on this button, see, changes are detected. If we want to reattach the change detector to the change detector tree, then we can use reattach function. Let me show you the example. So here I already have detached the event, and now let me reattach. So this .cd dot reattach will reattach the change detector again on changes call. So now let's see in the browser, if I click on this button, the changes are detected. So that is how reattach works. Okay guys, so that's all for today. If this video is helpful for you, then please don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Thank you. Thanks for watching.